Knoll Nation, welcome into another episode of the Renegade Rundown. As always, my lovely co-host to my side, Jen Santee, aka Jen Santee 1890 on Twitter or Jen Knoll 2013. Make sure you're out there following her. And we've got our good friend Doug Rohan, attorney at law. Thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead and get you a plug. Let the people know where you practice law and where they can reach you at, and let's have some fun and talk about some ACC settlement.
Well, thank you all for having me. It's a pleasure spending time with you Friday night and a little bit of smoke wagon, just
I heard
kicking and
that.
talking about the Knolls, having a good time. But yes, I'm an attorney out of
Oh.
Atlanta, Georgia. Georgia has the largest alumni base outside of the state of Florida here in Atlanta. So just want to make sure that all of the Knolls here in Atlanta know that they want to have somebody to call when shit hits the fan, because that happens. We're your best friends on your worst day. We do workers' comp, criminal defense, personal injury, but really it doesn't matter what the area of law is. If you have a question and you're a Knoll, call our office and we'll make sure to point you in the right direction or let you know how we can help you. So we love coming on board and talking to you about the ACC stuff. I want to know what's going on, so I've been reading all about it. I know several other lawyer Knolls are on Twitter talking about it. So I just wanted to know what's going on. And I love educating people on the law. So those two things have come together and have just made it a perfect match. And so coming on here and talking with you all about what's going on and try to put it in plain terms is one of my passions. So I'm happy to be here with you all.
I love it, man. Yeah, we've had Danielle Kelly on here before. It's pretty cool. Just Knoll Nation, like we've got experts in every area, and it's pretty cool to be able to call upon each other and have some of these fun situations. And me and Jim are sure excited about this. Just getting everybody started. If you hadn't heard what happened, everybody knows that Florida State had a meeting, filed suit against the ACC to try to get out of our grant of rights. Well, like the day before that, it was a Thursday morning, the ACC got wind that this Board of Trustees meeting was scheduled, because in the state of Florida, you can't do anything. You can't do anything sneaky like that. You're not going to rule out the CEO over the clever at night. Everything has to be public, stuff like that. So they knew that the Board of Trustees meeting was coming up. What was it going to be? They knew what the deal was. So they filed a suit ahead of time, basically saying that, FSU was doing this and doing that, breaking their contract. Well, they've gone and amended that suit that they initially had brought against Florida State. And that's kind of what all the hoopla was. And me and Jen see it kind of like, boy, they have just shown their hand. But there was kind of 6 major points in the new thing. And I guess we can go through it point by point. We can start with the first one. The first one says the first claim for relief is a request for declaratory judgment that the grant of rights and amended grant of rights are valid and enforceable contracts. For me reading that, it seems like they just put a bunch of words behind each other. But what can you tell the people about that first one? It's basically saying that the grant of rights are being valid or enforceable. There's not even room for Florida State to do anything there, I guess.
So there's two things I want to mention about this. And the first is just taking a step back and talking about why this is in the news again. They filed an amended complaint. And the first thing I want to make clear is that that's a very standard practice when you're litigating a case. You file suit, you file your complaint. In this case, it's a complaint for declaratory judgment. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the amended complaint happens because after you filed your complaint and before any discovery or before any answers, some additional information might come to light. So what happened here was the ACC did rush out to North Carolina courts and filed their suit first. Then Florida State filed their suit in Florida. So now the ACC has a glimpse into what it is that the FSU Board of Trustees is claiming. So they've amended their complaint to start talking about some of those issues that obviously were pointed out to be a little bit weak, maybe fill in a few more gaps. So that's why the amended complaint was filed, and it's very standard practice. As far as what that first claim for relief is, they're basically restating what they said before, which is nobody has breached the contract yet, which is why this is not a suit for breach of contract. This is a declaratory judgment action saying if the contract is breached, what is the court going to say? So in this first claim, the ACC is just restating what they originally said, which is we want the courts to issue a declaratory judgment saying we've looked at the grant of rights. We've listened to both sides of the arguments about the grant of rights. We believe that the grant of rights is solid, and Florida State, whatever you do next, you need to do with the understanding that a court of law has issued an order saying the grant of rights is as strong as the ACC thinks it is. That's what the ACC hopes happens.
Well, see, that's why I guess that's why I was having so much trouble when I read through it. I guess I was reading it. It's right. It's like, does the ACC really think any judge in their right mind is going to read that thing and come with that conclusion? I highly doubt
certainly
it.
a possibility. I mean, I agree, but I'm a homer. I've got all my FSU
Right.
helmet sign behind me. I'm coming from this from an angle. But yeah, the question is, does the ACC have a strong hand, or does Florida State's complaint that they filed the next day explain why the grant of rights and the ACC contract should not be upheld? And truthfully, I was one of my viral posts right after the snub at the college football playoffs was that I wanted lawsuits, and I wanted lawsuits now. And somebody asked, well, what is the lawsuit going to say? And I was like, I don't know. I do criminal defense and personal injury and workers' comp. But now that I've read the complaint from Florida State, it's actually stronger than I thought it would be. And they had made some very good points. They obviously disclosed some new information that we'll get into a little bit later. But at the end of the day, Florida State has some legitimate teeth in their argument as to why the grant of rights shouldn't be applied to them. And so now the ACC is just trying to fill in those gaps and address some of the issues that Florida State stated in their complaint.
Absolutely. Did you have anything before we moved on to the second one, Jen?
No, I think he's doing an amazing job.
Oh, he's ready. He's got this thing on lock. And if you think,
my God, I wonder if he's getting tired of having to explain it to people.
Not at all. I love it. I love it. I love it. This is so much fun for me.
and if you think we need to step back to kind of, cover the larger scope, me and Jim could go with you all day on that. And we probably will after we do these 6. I just figured it'd be good to knock these out first. So just if you feel like that, just be sure to stop me. But the second claim in this latest change they have says Florida State is estopped by its acceptance of benefits, quasi or estoppel, or has waived by its conduct any change or challenge to the grant of rights and amended grant of rights. So yeah, if you can unfurl that one.
So that's our first SAT word of the day, estoppel. That's the first word that we're learning today. What estoppel means in law situations is what you're trying to do, you can't do. You're not allowed to do it. So the ACC is trying to say that regardless of what the arguments are, your behavior and your actions stop you from breaking this contract or from claiming that the grant of rights is invalid. And what they're basing that on is Florida State already receiving money under the grant of rights. Now, I don't think that's a very strong argument because Florida State's not arguing that we shouldn't have been in this contract in the past. We're just saying from this date forward, they tried to relate it to August of 2023. We can touch on that. I don't think that's a reality. But going forward, we no longer want to be subjected to this grant of rights. So the estoppel is, for example, I pay you, George, $1 million to do X. Well, if you take the $1 million, you need to do X. And you can't take the $1 million and say, I'm not going to do X because you've already gotten $1 million. Well, here, Florida State hasn't been paid their 2024 grant of rights, the 2025 grant of rights, the 2026 grant of rights. So there really is no claim for estoppel based on the future activities of what the university is going to do.
Especially when that contract really and truly ends in 2027, and you've got this whole, and I'm sure we'll get into that more later after we get through these 6 points so we can break them down for people. But yeah, it's pretty ridiculous that they would, could. Now that people understand what that estoppel term means, like it just doesn't fit. Like Doug said, yeah, they have a claim for not being able to backdate that thing to 2023 because we've completed. We've got the ACC championship under our belt. We did that whole 2023 thing, which everybody that's watched us, they know our hope, our prediction. It's all around 2025, so that leaves us right on track. The third claim for relief is that Florida State has breached its promises in the grant of rights and the amended grant of rights agreements, which that's pretty self-explanatory, but just saying basically that we've already breached our promise. I know part of that is just the fact that we've even brought this, to the daylight to even possibly challenge this thing is how we've already broken the grant of rights.
So one of the clauses in the contract is a promise by all of the parties not to challenge the grant of rights. That, of all the issues in the ACC lawsuit, is the absolute weakest part of their case. The reason why is because it is okay to challenge an invalid or void contract. It's okay to say, I can no longer complete this contract because the situation has changed. The reason why that language is included in some contracts is because if you do bring a frivolous claim, if you do bring a claim that's just ridiculous, we want to break this contract because the sky is blue, then you're going to get hit with attorney's fees. And those attorney's fees could be substantial. So they use this clause in the contract to say, look, you sign this contract, which we agree, perhaps under duress, can talk
With a gun
about
to our
that
head.
later, right? But you sign the contract. This is a contract. You need to abide by this contract. And since you didn't abide by the contract, we're going to hit you with attorney's fees. And you shouldn't feel bad because we told you that this was going to happen if you filed suit and challenged this contract. Well, we have some legitimate reasons as to why we're challenging this contract. So that application, that clause, really is a toothless wonder that has nothing to do and is not going to stop us from ultimately litigating this issue.
I mean, that's them really just being really hopeful. It's like, how dare you even mention this thing? It's like, look, NDA from hell inside of an NDA. It's like unreal.
The reality in litigation, just as a strategy standpoint, is you come up with every possible reason you have for why the judge might rule in your favor. You throw it all in the blender, you hit it on high spin, you see what the judge decides, and then the judge picks which of your arguments is the reason why the judge is making the decision. So you throw all of the crap in there, you never know what's going to stick. But at the end of the day, of the things that the ACC is alleging, suing over the grant of rights and violating the contract part that says you can't sue for the grant of rights is one of their weakest arguments.
Absolutely. And thank you, Amelia Isla. She has been just making it rain in the chat. We appreciate the $4.99 super sticker. And Pretty Knoll Girl is like cooking empanadas and beef and all kind of stuff for the chat. I don't know if she's out there, but she's going to have all the guys in this chat after her talking about all that stuff. I saw a short on this the other day and it said to run. So I don't know. Pretty Knoll Girl seems pretty legit, but yeah, she's luring folks out there with empanadas. And thanks again for the super chat. On to the next one. It's pretty funny. It goes hand in hand kind of with the third claim. They're saying Florida State has breached its obligation to protect confidential information. And that one, I guess, comes from the fact that we looked up a report that was done by a media member in North Carolina who, used their laws up there to get a hold of the thing and then posted it online. Well, somehow us bringing that post online and, reading the information, I guess, has got us in our breach of our obligation, I guess, broken our NDA of sorts.
Well, look, the reality is that you can look at both complaints side by side and see how the parties are treating this information. ACC filed their initial complaint and they had all their exhibits attached. But if you've had a chance to look at their filing, several of those exhibits were filed under seal. So what that means is we're going to submit those documents to the court. We're going to submit those documents to the other party, but we know all court records are public records and we don't want these certain items to be public records. Meanwhile, Florida State files their document, their complaint with 17 exhibits and 100 pages of exhibits, and they just throw it all out there. Nothing's redacted, nothing's covered, and nothing's protected. So the ACC is coming back now and saying, look, we want the court to recognize that we tried to be careful with our sensitive information. Florida State was reckless and put everything in the public record, and that has caused harm to the ACC in contravention, that's the other word, from their constitutional requirements and the bylaw requirements to protect the ACC's reputation. There's no question that filing this lawsuit is affecting the ACC's reputation. We'll talk about that ESPN contract in a few minutes also. But at the end of the day, the ACC is legitimately concerned with how they're going to look coming out through this litigation.
They had
Florida
better.
State doesn't care how the ACC looks coming through this litigation.
And part of it, that's obviously there's that bit of, snide, like, let's get the shit out of there. But there's also the fact that they just know how business goes in Florida. And Florida State could try to seal that stuff up all they want. It's not going to happen. It's going to be public record. So you just rip the Band-Aid off. It's better just to put it out now than to try to hide it. Names aren't getting redacted. It's obvious what's going on. I can't wait. And that all Raycom and the ESPN contract, that's why I think this thing will never get past discovery. And Jen, if you have any questions, speak up. I feel terrible, but there's 2 more of these things left.
No. You guys are good because I was on with Doug last night, so I've kind of heard some of this. So we've kind of gone over it a little bit. And yeah, please keep going. I want our audience to hear it. Every minute.
She'll be ready to jump in with some good stuff for Doug after these. Then the 5th claim for relief: Florida State has breached and continues to breach its fiduciary obligations to the conference under the ACC Constitution and bylaws and North Carolina law. They stuck that in there. I guess they want to hold us to North Carolina law here in Florida State. I don't know how.
So I almost laughed out loud at this one as I was reading it. And really it's for 2 reasons. First off, the ACC is the one that has a fiduciary responsibility to Florida State. The ACC is the one that said, give us your grant of rights and we're going to take care of you. We're going to protect you. We're going to negotiate on your behalf. That's where the fiduciary duty exists. I've read through the entire complaint. I went to the Mecklenburg Courthouse website and I downloaded it. There's nothing in there that legitimately states what Florida State's fiduciary duty is to the ACC. Now, there is a duty to protect the reputation. That's not a fiduciary duty. The fiduciary duty means I'm acting on your behalf. ACC is the entity that's acting on behalf of Florida State. And the second thing is this issue with you're subject to the laws of North Carolina. Look, you morons, when you created this contract, you're supposed to put a choice of law provision in the contract. You're supposed to lay out ahead of time, if there's a problem with this contract, it's going to be handled under X state's laws. And they didn't do that. And they didn't do that because the ACC attorneys were morons. There's no way that anybody that understands basic contract principles dealing with 11, 12 member institutions across all these different states is going to have a contract without a choice of law provision. So again, this is just, it's comical how stupid they were in crafting this contract. And it was hubris. They thought they had it all figured out. They thought they had it wrapped up with a bow. They thought it was ironclad. And they made mistake after mistake after mistake. And to your point, George, it's very unlikely this gets to discovery because the ACC is the one with the skeletons in the closet. Florida State is happy to lay it all out there. They're happy to share all this information. The ACC is the one that's trying to keep this information private.
Facts, man. And that's what it's absurd to me. Like you said, it's hilarious and all, but it's absurd to me because it's basically a gun that just gets spun around on themselves. Like you said, they're the ones that are fiduciary responsibility because Florida State did its thing. We all know it gets the most views. It moves the needle. It sells the merchandise. It puts butts in seats at ACC championship. It does all that stuff. The ACC was supposed to be negotiating in good faith for Florida State, for Clemson, for everyone in the conference to have a chance to be the best of the best, to get that money, needed for that to happen. But really and truly, they were negotiating for Wake and Duke. That's who they were negotiating for.
Maybe they should have even stuck up for Florida State in the college football playoff negotiations.
You would think.
Talking about fiduciaries.
Unreal.
Okay. So the one thing I do have to say is, Doug, answer me if you think this is right. So what I would think is for the ACC to say, hey, this is they're breaching their fiduciary responsibilities, which is absolutely absurd. You're 100% right. Would be almost like your financial analyst coming at you saying, you bad-mouthing me and wanting to leave me holding this money for you while I've screwed up and haven't given the returns that I promised in a contract, you saying you want to leave, you owe me money now. Isn't that kind of the same thing?
I know all those other financial advisors average 10% returns for their clients, and I only averaged you 1% per year return on your client money. But since you went out to a bar and talked about how bad I am, you now owe me 50% of your recovery because that's how this is supposed to work. It's absurd.
Yeah. Okay. I was just making sure that I had the right analogy before I said it again.
Perfectly.
Be real.
You put it perfectly.
Now, this 6th one This takes the cake. This just blows my mind here. Sixth claim for relief. Florida State has breached its obligation of good faith and fair dealing under the ACC Constitution and bylaws. And you're about to explain this and everything, and this is going to be what most of my questions are going to be after we get past this. Is if you could please explain to me how, whatever his name is, the younger, the Raycom executive, the younger Swafford, Chad Swafford, I think his name was. How was all that? We're not going to talk about anything unless my son's company gets this. How was that at all in good faith and fair dealing? It's like it's another shotgun pointed right back at them.
2 different points. This is a great example of projection. Perhaps all 6 claims that the ACC is making is really stuff that the ACC has done, but projecting it on other people. But what they're accusing Florida State on is not acting in good faith. Look, if you think Florida State didn't spend a year or more talking about this in conference room tables, back rooms, discussions over lunch between the presidents and the commissioner, if you think that didn't happen, then you are a moron, because FSU absolutely wanted this to be handled 2 years ago when the 2021 contracts were signed. Then they had their August Board of Trustees meeting where they said, we're serious. We've been talking to you about this issue, and we're going to have to make some choices because, in their words at the Board of Trustees meeting, this is an existential threat to the Florida State program. And what they meant when they said that is when Vanderbilt is getting $30 million a year and Florida State is getting $12 million a year, there will not be any level playing field. We will not have the same number of assistants, off-field experts. We can't possibly compete recruiting-wise. And Vanderbilt is going to have 3 times the operating budget that our Florida State football team does, even with as basically irrelevant as that program might be in the national stage. So when the Board of Trustees said in August, we're tired, we're going to make changes, that was the warning shot to the ACC about them being serious. And the ACC still didn't do anything. If you're in the championship game and if you're in the New Year's Six Bowl, we'll give you an extra 10% or whatever the agreement is. That's not what we're talking about. Florida State is responsible for 30% of your eyeballs in football. I'm not saying Florida State deserves 30% of the revenue, but it darn sure isn't an equal revenue sharing situation.
It deserves 18%.
And the ACC didn't listen. And so to claim now that Florida State is acting in bad faith, to your point, George, is laughable, because it was the ACC that acted in bad faith and that abdicated. There's another SAT word for the day.
Yeah, we learned that one the other day. Sorry.
Good. They gave up their bargaining position in order to preserve Chad Swafford's job at Raycom. So now we're making sure that we have that ESPN contract so that Raycom can survive with all these second-tier games at a substantial discount in 2012, 2013, 2014 to what the other conferences were paying. Now, fast forward 10 years later, and that disparity is just wildly insane. This 4.5% per year escalation that is in the contract over a 20-plus year contract period is absurd. And that's where the ACC failed in their fiduciary duties and their fiduciary responsibilities to FSU, which is why this FSU complaint is stronger than I expected.
Absolutely. Jen, did you have anything?
No, I think everything he said checks out. I mean, like I said, it's he's explaining it very well. I don't need to go into it, I don't think, anymore.
Well, I've got plenty of questions, so
go for it.
Go ahead.
Let me pivot before you do that. So you've gone through the claims. That's what the claims are in the amended complaint. The next thing to talk about is this idea of injunctive relief. So the injunction is what the ACC is asking in the second part of their amended complaint. What they're saying is, in the injunctive relief portion is, look, Judge, you don't have to decide the grant of rights yet. We know that's going to be a long process. We know that's going to take a while. But while we're fighting this issue, we want you to slap Florida State on the wrist and tell them not to share private information, not to participate in any conference business, and to basically go sit in a corner and time out until this conflict of interest is resolved through this litigation. So that's the other part of this complaint that was, I thought, underreported by Pete Thamel when this initially came out, but a very important piece, because what that does, and the conclusion of my statement regarding this, is that has now chilled or stopped Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, anybody else that wants to join into this litigation. That has thrown the brakes on that process, because now the ACC is getting a little hot under the collar and is threatening them with some significant penalties just for filing. So Florida State is going to go this alone until we have some type of resolution, because now these other universities are going to say, well, we still want to have a vote at the table, so maybe we'll just wait and sit back a little longer.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for Bobby. He's like one of the coolest, one of the very few super, super cool Miami fans. I know he's a member over there on Chris's channel. And I think he's the only one to actually pay for a membership. I think we've had one or two get gifted one. So we appreciate you, Bobby, man. And we'll get you over on the Florida State side before it's over with.
I'm a product of the 305, Coral Gables grad 93. I understand where you're coming from.
So, first off, because I kind of put it in the thumbnail.
Bobby's going to hit the transfer portal in a little bit. We already
Absolutely.
know it.
He's got plenty of years left of eligibility. We'll get him over here, man. But I wanted to ask you, because it's kind of what I put in the thumbnail. And, reading through this thing, watching all the different programs you've been on, having you on, getting to talk to you, it just really reads to me like this whole thing is just, they're kind of like throwing crap against the wall, like you mentioned, with putting enough stuff in there. And it just feels like this thing is going to settlement sooner than even we had kind of expected. We kind of talked about maybe it could get into close to next season, but I just have a feeling it may be May, March, April, May. Like it just screams of desperation. Is there anything about this coming out and them kind of releasing this at that time that makes you think it would be any sooner that you end up getting a resolution? I guess is the question I would ask you.
So the next big important date is February 16th. Both parties have filed pleadings and documents in each case saying answers will be due on February 16th in both cases. So even though they were filed a day apart, they're going to have simultaneous answers filed in their respective courthouses on February 16th. What is an answer? The answer is the chance to say, nuh-uh, basically. They want to say everything that was just said in the complaint is not true, and this is why. And this is an important step because, lawyers, we have an ethical duty to be honest and deal with the court accurately. A complaint can allege a whole bunch of different things. They can say whatever they want, basically. And you'll notice if you actually read the complaint from the amended complaint from the ACC, one of their favorite terms is upon information and belief. And what that means is basically we think this is what the evidence is going to show. Well, when it comes to a trial, it's based on what the evidence actually shows, not what was in the complaint. So in both cases, we're dealing with, okay, let's assume everything you said is true. Between the two, I'd much rather be on the Florida State side than on the ACC side, because nothing in the ACC complaint or amended complaint really pushes back on anything that Florida State alleges. The second part about that is that in that answer, it will be a chance for them to assert some defenses. And again, not being the uber contract expert and being 20 years of experience in specifically contract law, I'll be very curious to see what specific answers and defenses they have, because that's what goes in the answer. So when those come out February 16th, we'll come do this show again and we'll talk about everything that's in the answers, but we'll be curious to see what is the response from each party in each court. And then that's when the scheduling order comes out from the judge shortly after, maybe 10 days after, about how discovery is going to progress. So there's a chance that this, first off, I'm sure that the attorneys are talking even right now about what will it take to settle. If I was a fly on the wall and if I had a crystal ball, I'm guessing that Florida State is probably proposing somewhere between $60 and $80 million. The ACC is probably saying we can't do anything less than $200 million. So they're not in the same ballpark yet when it comes to what the figure is. Both sides want to see how desperate is the other side. Once the answers are filed and we start getting into discovery, that's when I think the ACC and more importantly, ESPN behind ACC is going to start getting a little bit more concerned with what information is going to come out with discovery. So sometime in the February to April timeframe is probably a good bet for a quick settlement. Somewhere between April and August is an intermediate time frame, and then anything after August and after the season starts is basically both sides digging their heels and saying, no, we're right and we're willing to ride this out.
If that happens, we're going to get discovery the whole 9 yards. But the important thing, I believe it's August 15th, is the date to submit our name to be possible to be in the Big Ten by 2025. So we definitely hope it happens before then. But this was the main part that screamed desperation to me and really made me look at it sideways and made me think this thing is really going to move forward quickly. Was this whole part? This court issue a permanent injunction barring Florida State from participating in the management and the affairs of the conference while it has a direct and material conflict of interest with the purposes and objectives of the conference. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but the fact that they would try to lock us out, like, what are they worried about? Like, what vote is there that goes on that we could, vote against their behalf? Like, they literally voted in 2 teams in Cal and Stanford without our vote. And how can they go before a judge and my words just are not coming with me, but how can they justify letting a Notre Dame team or athletic department get to vote and bringing those people in? It just seems like there's holes everywhere in this thing.
Yeah, I heard some people today fired up about the Notre Dame issue. I'm not as worried about Notre Dame because we knew what Notre Dame's plan was when they came into the ACC. We knew that they were not bringing their football revenue with them, that it was just their Title IX sports and Olympic sports. So I'm not as concerned with that. Go ahead.
But they voted in football teams.
To be fair, we all knew that. Stan Wilcox, on the other hand, was an idiot.
Selling you a different story.
And said, oh, at some point, we're going to get Notre Dame up in here, guys. We're going to get them in here. Notre Dame is not coming to the ACC.
Well, speaking of, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
If they're forced to join a conference, it's going to be the Big Ten guys. I don't care what anybody says. It is not going to be the ACC. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to get out of the ACC with no money, with all their votes.
So to go back to the original,
there you go.
To go back to the original question, the Pac-12 that got down to the Pac-2 did exactly the same thing. Once you assert or once you announce your decision to leave the conference, that's actually standard practice. Now, this is where the curiosity comes in about Florida State's complaint, where they ask at the end of each one of their paragraphs, hey, would you please relate back? If you agree with us that the grant of rights is invalid, we want you to relate back our notice to that August Board of Trustees meeting and have that count as notice that we're leaving the conference. I don't think it's going to work that way. That notice is notice. Even if the contract's invalid, even if the grant of rights is invalid, there's still a notice provision. Because remember, when a contract is under scrutiny, a judge has the right to basically have a line item veto. And when they veto certain portions of the contract, the rest of the contract is still valid. So that notice provision is not so far being attacked. That notice provision is reasonable. We schedule these football teams 1 year, 2 years, 3 years out of conference schedule, 4 or 5 years out. So it is reasonable that even with a Tallahassee or Florida judge confirming that the grant of rights is invalid, that the notice provision takes place at the moment that the university actually says we are out. So that hasn't happened yet. I don't think they can relate it back. So yeah, once Florida State announces they're out, they lose their vote. It's not unreasonable for a judge, of all the things that the ACC is asking, it's not unreasonable for the judge to say, yeah, you're trying to get a divorce. Clearly your interests are not aligned at the moment. So yeah, we are going to sit you in a corner in the back room just waiting for this to be resolved. Now, what's important about that is now the judge has a sense of urgency. And this was one of the tweets that I put out immediately after this came out. A judge is not going to let this case play out for 2 years and at the same time put Florida State in timeout. If Florida State's in timeout, that's going to increase the urgency of this case. And if it does get into a courtroom, it's going to happen much faster.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I laugh at, when they talk about fiduciary duties and stuff. Well, Notre Dame in 2020 when COVID was going on and all that stuff, did they not have a fiduciary duty to like put their feet to the fire and say, "Hey, look, they didn't have anywhere to play football, but they pretty much just let them come in." I just feel like there's just places all over. It's just so many
The
things that get on your nerves
ACC
about it.
is poorly managed, and that's why at the end of the day, this is
Facts.
a game of Russian roulette. But instead of one bullet in a 6-chamber gun, the ACC has one empty slot, and there's 5 bullets in the chamber. The likelihood of the ACC successfully navigating this lawsuit and whatever fallout that comes with it, and still surviving 10 years from now, is a very slim proposition. So they have a very narrow needle to thread, or a hole to thread the needle, in order for them to allow Florida State out and also still survive.
So that gives me a very good question. Is there a law? Is there a precedence out there somewhere? Is there a case law where if there's one member of an organization that just means so much to it that if they're going to leave, this thing's going to completely fall apart to where, that could work in the ACC's favor?
I don't know that there's precedent or case law to that point. That's part of what makes this so unique, is there's been so little litigation on the issue of grant of rights. I mean, shoot, some of these, podcasts and websites are pointing to a 1997 Harvard Law Review as the end all be all as to how to attack a grant of rights. So clearly not a lot of litigation has gone on. Now, that being said, that's exactly basically what the ACC is trying to argue. You are an equal member, and how dare you ask for anything more than an equal share? But, Judge, this property is so important to us that we can't possibly let them out until 2036. You can't argue both things at the same time. So it's very interesting to see what happens. Truthfully, not that the ACC is asking me my opinion. They shouldn't ask me my opinion. Let me say that very clearly. Mm-hmm. But one avenue that I could see a successful resolution to this is Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, maybe Miami. If 5 teams pay $200 million or $150 million to get out of the conference, now it doesn't matter what the TV contract is until 2036 because they've got a war chest. The ACC has a way to sustain itself over the next 5 years until they reconstitute themselves as a G5 conference or a secondary conference, which does have an emphasis on basketball, baseball, the Olympic sports. They're not going to be part of the top tier. They gave up their interest, and again, the ACC is operating from a defensive posture when they went out and got SMU, Cal, and what was the third one?
I think it was just SMU and Cal, wasn't it? Stanford. That's right.
Those are the
freaking Stanford
that you invited into the conference to bolster, while the Big Ten and the SEC are gobbling up all the superpowers. You go out and pick those 3 schools.
They couldn't even get Oregon State. Like Oregon State would have been better.
The ACC is not a serious conference. They're not going to be a top tier conference. They have confirmed that
those were replacement teams.
Power 2, right?
Is there anything but those replacement teams, Doug? Do you think they can really say in court that we added those teams to add value to the conference? Like, what's the good of having G5 teams in LA? That doesn't add to your market. If it was USC, hell yeah, but there's no way you're going to prove that Stanford is going to make is going to move the needle to get you from 30 million to 70 million. And you mentioned it earlier. They were supposed to be competitive. Right. You're talking about 40 million versus 100. Like, I just don't see a judge voting for this thing.
This validates Florida State's claim that the ACC is not serious and is operating from a defensive posture. We already talked about Raycom. Let's preserve Raycom. Now the ACC is just interested in preserving itself. Last summer, we were talking about what are the strategies for getting out of the grant of rights. And one of the strategies was having 7 members vote to dissolve the ACC. That was a legitimate and valid way out of the grant of rights. So what does the ACC do in response to that? Let's go try and lure, Oregon State into the ACC. No, Let's go try and lure some of the other Pac-12 teams that are disbanding into the no. They went and got 3 bottom feeders just so they could make the numbers more difficult for dissolution. Now you have to have 9 members, and 3 of them just joined. They sure as heck don't want the ACC to go by the wayside. So the
Right.
ACC constantly and repeatedly operates from a position of weakness, and this litigation is no different. It's poorly led, and at the end of the day, that's why I think and believe in my heart that the Florida State is going to get out of this, and it's going to be a favorable deal.
So somebody else just brought it up, but it was actually a point I was going to bring up. So with Stanford and Cal being added at the behest of Notre Dame, who does not bring any real revenue in, because we know what sports they're allowed in to play and we know what the revenue is, right? They were allowed this vote. It was at their behest. That adds to Florida State's claim of fiduciary responsibilities. Am I wrong in reading it that way?
No, I think you're exactly right. What the ACC said with the grant of rights is, give us your rights 100% without question, and we will negotiate the best possible contract on your behalf.
And then they don't do it.
They shat the bed. They shat the bed.
Yeah.
And not only did they do that in 2013 and 2016 and 2021, but they're continuing to do it in 2023 by inviting these 3 nobodies into the conference to support. There's nothing that the ACC has done to demonstrate that they have acted in a position of power and strength through the course of the ACC contract.
Yeah, so I'm so confused as to how other ACC fans aren't livid over Notre Dame
Ooh, that's a good point.
moving their elbows, allowing these 2 scrubs to come in. By the way, I think SMU is a nice ad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the
I
3
think
for sure.
monetarily, this is a nice ad. And I actually think Florida State would have been down with it had they maybe not added Cal and Stanford, maybe gone the, I know I'm going to say Memphis and everybody's going to think I'm a homer for that.
No,
But I think Memphis has a nice program. I think they have a nice basketball. They have a nice football program. Their academics is up. Their law school is ridiculously good.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at it that way, like, you know, an SMU, a Memphis, that type of block, maybe Tulane, maybe USF, maybe, I don't know. What were the other options? I can't think. But like, I think Florida State might have looked at that and said, you know what? That could probably move some needles, because I think SMU does move needles. I do. I know we tease on them. I think we make fun of them, but that school has so much money in their war chest. They can make their basketball program amazing. They can make their football program amazing if they could just get in a conference after the death penalty. You know what I mean?
The power rankings just came out today for 2024, and they were the highest rated of the 3 people we added. I agree with you 100%. What you said was 100% accurate. Let me add to that also, saying, look, I love Florida State football. We're a season ticket holder. Atlanta to Tallahassee is a very reasonable 4-hour drive. My passion and my love is actually the baseball team, and being an animal of Section B. I love the baseball aspect of the competitive sports. And if you take a step back at what is the purpose of a contract, a conference, it's to align similar institutions with similar interests, and that presumably have a geographic relationship to each other, so that you can have a community of other universities. There's some great baseball teams in the state of Florida. There's some great baseball teams in the Southeast. Any addition to the ACC should have been from a position of what draws eyeballs first, yes, but secondary, what is the geographical benefit to bringing in new members? And Cal and Stanford sure as heck don't meet either of those tests. So when you're talking about how can the conference grow and how can the conference adapt, there should have been some question as to what secondary sports and geography would play into a stronger ACC. Look, there's also the AAU and the academic and the research portion. And the truth is, Florida State and Clemson outclass the majority of those others, not just in the sports, but in the mag lab and in the other research that's being poured in. So you have to look at what is it that makes sense for Florida State in the conference. And we have to look at it from a holistic standpoint. Florida State cannot stay in the ACC. By contrast, Wake Forest loves being in the ACC.
Loves it.
And to make a long road back to your question, the bottom half of the ACC loves the addition of these other teams, and they love what they're getting from the ACC. It's because they're providing 6% of the viewership and they're getting 17% of the money. So there's a lot of people in the ACC happy with the status quo, and that's why they're not upset with Notre Dame or at the additions of these other people.
Yeah,
do you think all these schools know that they're socialists? Are they okay with it?
Don't make him spit his drink out.
It almost ended up on the whole computer screen. That's a great
I'm just
question,
wondering, because Wake Forest seems to me like a school that would be anti-socialist, but do they know that that's exactly what they're doing?
That's a fantastic question. You should put it to the provost.
Seems like maybe it's a shot over the bow to keep the Clemsons of the world, with this whole trying to put an injunction on our voting rights and stuff. Maybe that's why they're trying to re-up and do this stuff. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. But could it be that? Could it be that they're just trying to, because it seems like if somebody else does jump in, one of the other big schools, then it's just, there's upskirt photos everywhere. It's like we're just seeing down your blouse. It's over with. And thank you, Amelia Islandall. She is, again, just making it rain. She gifted another 5 memberships. So thank you so much. But yeah.
And guys, I can only tell you the memberships are at random. We, nor she, anybody else who gives them away, we can't, it's not up to us. It just does it at random. I'm sorry.
Also, guys, if you check in the description, I put it in the live chat. I'll put it in the regular comments after the thing. Me and Jen's merch shop is finally open. We've got some cool short shirts and hoodies and all that stuff for you guys. It's not up on the actual YouTube app yet, but the link's there in the description and all that stuff, so you can go check that out as well. And again, thanks a million, Doug, for joining us. And if you had anything you wanted to plug or anything you wanted to let, I'm sure we have some listeners in your area there. If you wanted to let them know about your law office, you're more than welcome.
No, I had a great time. This is a wonderful way to spend a Friday night, and I don't mind sticking around if you have some other topics you want to talk about. I've got lots of opinions. But no, at the end of the day, follow us on Rohan Law PC on Twitter or social media. Look, I know that you don't hopefully need me right now. I prefer that you never need my services. If you need my services, you're having a really crappy day. But follow us on social media. Follow us on any platform that you're looking at. And then if the off chance you find yourself in an accident or you find yourself, charged with a crime, you have a NOL that's going to come alongside you and walk you through the process and make sure that you're taken care of here in the state of Georgia. It is the state of Georgia. I recognized that 2 years ago when I got really active on Twitter that Florida State is my passion and my home, and most of the people that we interact with are in Florida. But I went to law school in Florida, and I've got lots of friends. So even if you're in Florida and find yourself in trouble, I've got friends down there, I've got classmates down there, and we'll make sure that you get put with somebody that can come alongside you and walk you through a difficult time.
No, heck no, man. We're not kicking you off. We'll just let you get a mid-show plug. Heck, if you're down, we'll open the phone lines up. It was supposed to be the second hour. We're a little early, but we'll see if any of these people have any questions for you. If you want to answer some from them,
let's go for it.
We'll keep it rolling. So again, guys, y'all check out that merch shop. Get your memberships. We'll be doing our first members-only live stream next week. We haven't decided whether it's going to be Tuesday or Friday or what, but there will be a members-only live stream next week. So make sure you're a member. If you want to be a part of that, get your memberships taken care of. But we're about to throw the bat line on the bottom of the screen there. So if you have any questions for Doug while he's on here with us, get your call in. And I think I seen one in the comments. A question for you.
While you're
chat is going crazy.
Good. Let me throw in why I'm an FSU fan and what's going on there. I was a 4-year marching chief, played saxophone. Ooh. I married another trumpet in the band. So yes, that one time at band camp that does apply. And I've got some kids, none of which so far are going to Florida State, but we'll see. The oldest is a senior, just going to App State as she graduates high school now. But like I said, I'm an animal of Section B. I love going down and watching the baseball games. Sad to hear about Coach Martin going into hospice.
Prayers up for Coach Meek, man.
I'm a Golden Bowden Society member and booster, and like to go back to as many games. I'll be in Ireland, so if you are watching the show and you want to be in Ireland, and we'll catch up and have a Guinness pint while we're over there. So I really am a diehard Seminole, and this has just been a marriage of my interest in law and my interest in educating people and my interest in Florida State. We
love it, man. King Spleen, I'll get back to your question, but we got our first caller on the line. Go ahead.
Hey, so this is Nick. Doug, for you, I know divorce is really messy with this conference stuff. My big question is, I don't want it to get too messy to potentially burn bridges in the SEC and Big Ten. Is our contract and the grant of rights similar enough to those leagues that it could cause problems in the future, depending on how deep we go? Or is it something that's insulated to just the ACC?
Nick, I think that's a great question, brother. What I would respond to there is look at how the SEC behaves with their rights. First off, the SEC is a better product. Let me start off by saying that. I'm not saying that the ACC and SEC are on par, but the SEC just signed a $3 billion deal with ESPN. Now, I don't know the exact terms of that contract, so I haven't looked at it, but I believe the SEC and the ESPN contracts are routinely for 3 to 6 year periods. So they're much smaller and shorter time frames. They don't have to have a grant of rights because everybody wants to be in the SEC. Everybody wants to be part of that conference. If you have a good product, if you're amazing, you don't need to handcuff somebody into a contract with some ridiculous $500 million penalty to get out of it. We skipped over this because we didn't talk about the original lawsuit, but the FSU's original lawsuit introduced us to this term of the Hobson's choice. In 2016, when Maryland left and they increased the penalties, they did give Florida State a choice as to whether or not to sign this contract, but it was sign this contract or you owe us $200 million without us having planned for it. We didn't have that kind of money in the war chest back then. So it wasn't really a choice. We were forced into this contract because we couldn't afford the alternative. So the SEC and the Big Ten dealings don't require these ridiculous grant of rights because they're a better product. I've seen a few trolls saying, well, who's going to want you if you're behaving like this? Screw that. Eyeballs talk. That's what this all comes down to. They want the viewership on ESPN. Our 63-3 beatdown to Georgia was the single biggest viewed non-playoff game in the bowl season. As bad, we knew that was going to be bad. Our walk-ons and our freshmen were playing a marginally impacted Georgia team. We knew it was going to be ugly and still got the highest ratings of any of the bowl games that weren't the playoffs. I was watching when the whole coaching issue went. One of my tweets was talking about on Twitter on the side, it talks about what's active and what's trending. There were 14,000 tweets about Mike Norvell and 2,000 tweets about DeBoer. You think that they don't want Florida State in their conference? No, I have no concerns about the way that Florida State is behaving, the way Florida State is acting and trying to get out of this. And either SEC or Big Ten would be willing to take us. Me personally, after the playoff snub, I don't want to see Kirk Herbstreit's face on my TV screen again. I don't want to be on ESPN Game Day again. Big noon Fox me all day long.
Let's go.
Get me a rivalry game with Penn State. Let's start that new rivalry tradition. I would prefer to be the Big Ten. But again, with my baseball love and with a booster that wants to travel to other games, sure, I would love to have Ole Miss and Alabama and Georgia on our home schedule.
No.
But
y'all just come visit me. Y'all just come visit me. We're gonna go to the Big Ten, but like y'all come visit me. I'll take you to an Ole Miss game if you really want to go.
All right. Well, we got another caller. I hate to cut y'all off, but they're like blowing this thing up. Go ahead with your question for Doug.
Hi, Doug. I got a question. So I heard you on a show the other day. You've been on like a lot of shows lately, and you said that you thought their best argument was the ACCs was because of the money they're going to lose. Especially if we lost the ESPN, they didn't renew it. And I thought that was a really good point. But then I thought, wait a minute, they were supposed to renew it in 2021. And Phillips went ahead and gave them an opportunity to wait 5 more years. So Florida State would have nothing to do with that not being renewed because they should have done it beforehand. So therefore, they would lose that argument immediately. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
I think that's an interesting approach to that angle.
Appreciate the question, brother.
Yeah. What was his name? Did he get a name? He didn't say his name on the
sorry.
phone. Well, follow me and send me a message on Twitter because that question was good enough that you deserve a shout out, and I'll give you a shout out on Twitter. That is the argument against. And look, I hesitated to mention that the first time, and I waited until I saw 1 or 2 other people on Twitter commented because I thought it immediately. But there's always an argument and a counter argument. And you have brilliantly outlined why there's a counter argument to this strongest argument of the ACC. The strongest argument, when they're all crappy, shitty, bad arguments, does not mean that it's a great argument. It's just the best of the arguments. The ESPN contract was a unilateral extension, a unilateral option. And you're right. The ACC gave them an additional 5 years to exercise that right without getting anything in return. So now we have a contract that goes through 2026, which means by February of 2025, ESPN has the right without paying any additional monies, without exercising any financial additional expenses. They just say yes or no as to whether or not they want 2027 through 2036. So what that means is, and it was exposed in the Florida State filing, actual value of the grant of rights can only be determined through 2026. My point in saying that this could be an argument for the ACC is now that we've created this dust cloud, ESPN might sit back and be like, yeah, you're right. We don't want to broadcast the ACC without Florida State, without Clemson, without Miami. The 4.5% escalation clause on an already ridiculously low amount isn't even worth broadcasting Wake Forest and Pitt and Syracuse when those are going to be the marquee games on a Saturday night.
Absolutely. And we got a celebrity on the line, Amelia Island, that has been just donating all over the place. She's called in. You are live on the Renegade Rundown. What's up, Amelia?
Hey guys, it's so good to finally speak to you guys in person.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Thank you for calling.
Thank you for taking my call. I just had a quick question about, I know Mr. Rohan Esquire is out of Georgia, and we've had some Florida attorneys give their perspective on the law and everything. Have we spoken to any North Carolina-based attorneys about how North Carolina handles lawsuits like this? I live in Mecklenburg County, so I got a lot of lawyer friends. I want to grill them if possible.
Well, we'll bring you into the loop. You'll be responsible for vetting our.
Thank you for calling, Amelia, and call back if you want.
That's great.
Okay, I just wanted to. Have you guys had anyone from North Carolina?
Yeah, he's gonna.
No.
Yeah, he's gonna answer it. So turn up your volume, and I'm gonna hang up and open the line back up. But thank you so much for calling, Amelia.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
That's a great point, Amelia. Look, the
Very good
homer
point.
in me, the homer in me believes that this is going to be a Florida case at the end of the day. Yeah. More importantly, I think, and more realistically, I think the case is going to get settled before it even goes to court. But you brought up an important, valuable point, and I have not reached out to anybody in North Carolina, and I haven't talked to anybody on any of the shows that have. So thank you for being one of the first people to suggest doing exactly that. I think that is a valuable insight. Worst case scenario, both home court judges say this is a local case. So then you have competing complaints that are going, and that's why I think there's a chance that this could end up in federal suit.
That is true. I guess I didn't think of the possibility of it going federal. I guess is obviously we have the sunshine law here in Florida, but another thing that I had heard is that basically in the state of Florida, if this thing does go to court, the judge isn't going to say, oh, well, you pay half. It's going to be all or nothing. Either Florida State is out of the grant of rights and they're scot-free, or they're on the hook for the full 120 plus 360, 380, escalating down the years to 2036. And in North Carolina, it's not like that. So I know there are some differences, But I mean, do you think a state would really be that much of a game changer if they were? I mean, obviously, I have to believe the law firm that Florida State hired has some North Carolina people on retainer. I haven't confirmed that from a source. It looks like Jen probably has talked to somebody about that.
They do.
They're going to have people on their team, so no worries about that. But yeah, you may have gave us an idea. Maybe that can be our members only show. We'll get a whole legal team on here and really break this son of a gun down. But no, that is a good point by Island.
What I was going to say is I think they are vetting North Carolina lawyers at a different firm, obviously, right now to get that sort of feedback going. Because, because they've had a lawsuit filed in another jurisdiction, Florida State will seek counsel in said jurisdiction to feel out what's going on. And I'm guessing that once those lawyers are announced, I'm pretty sure they already have them. I think that it's probably a quiet thing for the state of North Carolina. If you are an attorney in North Carolina, you're not going to want that publicized. But so yeah, I do. Yeah, they've gotten that sort of counsel hired.
I think that's very accurate, Jen. As soon as the complaint was filed, because you have to answer the complaint, even if your answer is this complaint is invalid and shouldn't move forward, you still need local counsel to file that answer. So that was a 100%. Very good point. And to go back to the original part that we were talking about, settlement versus is a judge really going to go all or nothing? That's the job of the judge. When I'm talking to my clients about settlement versus going to trial, settlement affords both parties the opportunity to resolve the issue in a manner where both parties are slightly dissatisfied, but you don't have the nuclear option. If you put this case in front of a judge, the judge is going to say the grant of rights is valid or the grant of rights is not valid. Those are the two choices for a judge. A judge doesn't have the right to say, I think half the grant of rights should be respected and you should pay $250 million. That's not what the judge says. It's not what the jury says. So going to trial is an all or nothing proposition, which is why 90% of cases settle before then. And that's what I expect to happen in this case as well.
Big thanks to Sonia Moore. Every one of these members is huge, and we can't wait to do that members only show. We also do cash giveaways. We don't have anything in particular lined up. We're like 100 from 2,000. We'll probably do a little bit something when we get to 2,000. Maybe give away a Renegade Report t-shirt or something like that. So we really appreciate you guys. We're an hour in. We'll switch gears. I can report on a little bit of portal, some high school recruiting stuff, talk about that. Doug's more than welcome to hang around. And then after that, we may talk a little bit about the Gators all of a sudden getting into some trouble. But first,
my daughters are getting restless, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off at this point. I appreciate the calls and the extra questions, and really appreciate you guys letting me come on and talk to you all. It was a very fun show this Friday night.
Man, it was absolutely awesome.
So much.
We would owe you like what, $400 if if you were on the clock. So we really appreciate your time, man.
Yeah. Sounds good. Y'all take care. Have a good one.
Absolutely. God bless, and we'll see you next time, man. Wow, that was a lot of fun. Well, I guess that's good time, and he's about to go. So, man, that was awesome. I mean, I think we probably did best getting him last because he's been through and he had that thing nailed. He had an answer for every question, and I feel so good about this thing. I don't think we get. Let's see. Right now it's January going into February. Yeah, I don't think we get to the summer, like the actual summer. Like, what is it, July? Whatever, like July, middle of July, that the actual summer starts, whenever it is. I don't think we get there. I think sometime April, May, June, we get that answer, but we'll see. We shall see. That's strictly just guessing. That's nothing, and of course, yes, we agree. Stone Ridge Farms. Thank you so much, Doug, for the great information. But back to the real world, back to what's going on in Tallahassee right now. It is junior, what do they call it? Junior day weekend, junior camp.
Yep.
Basically, all the 2025, 2026 kids getting to campus. We talked to you guys earlier this week about Florida State locking their coach down. Alabama wanted Mike Norvell. He stays home. He spurns them, but how did he spurn them? How did we find out? how did me and Jen, how were we so calm? How do we know? What came out publicly a day or two later? Well, he was at Mandarin High School recruiting guys, checking in on a quarterback, recruiting a particular wide receiver, particular safety. Said wide
And seeing
receiver.
his future quarterback.
Yep, that was the first one I said. Absolutely.
Oh,
Tramel Jones.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Yep. Checking in on his quarterback, Tramel Jones Jr., and a particular wide receiver named Jamie French. And he's a guy that just is an absolute freak. He's somebody we talked about wanting and wanting and wanting. It broke my heart when he committed to Alabama, but lo and behold, he has decommitted from Alabama, and now he is on campus. Everybody was pumped up to see it. When Jamie French comes on campus, it's a big deal. So all the different outlets caught pictures of him and ran stories. Really cool to see that he's in Tallahassee right after he kind of made a post. I think he posted something about the Florida Gators or something. I thought it was pretty funny. Bam, in Tallahassee. So I feel really, really, really good about this one. I think he ends up a Noel. Well, that's not to say that I know anything or he's some kind of silent or anything like that. I just think all the cards are there on the table. You've got a guy like James Coleman that coaches, and I thought it was between Alabama and the Florida State the whole time. It's why I was so sad when he went to Alabama. And now that there's a hole, sure, other teams are going to jump in there. Obviously, Florida's going to want to recruit him, but I just really like kind of the status and the rev limiter that Florida State has going, in recruiting. So put it this way, if we lost him, I'd be shocked, and it'd be a kind of I'd be pissed. So we'll see what happens there. But also another guy to talk
Not
about
pissed. Don't be pissed.
I'll be pissed, man. I'm just like every year
George
and every
is
cycle.
like the nicest guy in the world, and he's gonna get pissed.
Well, every cycle I say I'm not going to get like involved after Travis Hunter. It's like we're just not going to get. It is what it is. But when you have a guy like that at Mandarin. We got somebody asking, are we going to sweep the Mandarin 3? Harold Stubbs, I haven't got my, hopes up on Drake yet. I haven't got my hopes up yet. I haven't seen from him that he's going to be a guy that ends up at Florida State. I have my hopes up. I'm hoping James is putting in work despite what he says. I really do hope we can get Stubbs in, but I do feel confident about French. I feel like French just with Tramel Jones coming in here. And like I said, the biggest factor is Nick Saban retiring. I think he really had a lot of respect for what was going on there. I think they were remain competition, and they're out of it. And the same, similar thing with a name that's kind of gone quiet for a while, Amari Williams.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
George, are you saying that you're not worried about Jamie French wanting to go catch a ball from Fufflepugger at Miami? Is that what you're saying right now?
Who do they have? Is Poffenberger still? Is he still going to Miami? I figured when Cam Ward committed, he would have went his own way. But I don't know. Poffenberger.
I mean, I don't know because Jamie isn't coming in this year to play, so he is for Fufflepugger. Fufflepugger. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway,
Poffenberger. That's hilarious.
That sounds like something at In-N-Out Burger. Are you kidding me?
No, I agree. I think he'd much rather come through for either Luke Kromenhawk or Brock or whoever is quarterback in Florida State in 2025. I can't wait to see it. And obviously his quarterback's coming in, so yeah, I would love to see that. But like I said, another guy, Amari Williams, kind of disappeared off people's radar, kind of went quiet. He reclassified, and everybody thought he was going to pop to Florida State immediately. It kind of felt like he reclassified to go to Florida State. Well, then everybody started calling, including Alabama and stuff. So it was kind of in the air. Well, we have about another month till signing day. I don't know if he commits before then, but that's another one that I feel really comfortable about Florida State getting in this class. I just feel like the role that John Papuchis is on and this entire staff, I think Amari Williams ends up in there. Those are two big people that I think you can get out of the high school ranks here within the next couple of months, but we'll see how it goes. Is there anything in particular in high school you wanted to talk about?
Let's see. Well, you got to Amari, and then what
and
about
feel free to talk about them. You know what I mean? If there's something you wanted to
No, I mean, did you mention the quarterback though? Did you mention the quarterback that we
Which
got for
one?
2024?
For 2024.
I
Oh,
mean, he's a walk on.
the
He's
walk
a
on.
walk
Yeah, no,
on, but
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Talk about Trevor Jackson for sure. Bring him up.
Yeah. Look, this kid was committed to Ole Miss. He was at the Elite 11, and
Yep.
we've got him in as a walk on right now. And I get it. I get it. He lost some offers. I don't know what the issue was. I don't know what happened. If anybody does, you are welcome to discuss it, right? I mean, like, let's talk about it. We don't care. But what I'm saying is to get that type of talent in as a walk on without like using a scholarship is, I'll take it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's a 4-star quarterback. He won the Rail Shot Challenge at Elite 11. His issue, I'm not sure the exact circumstances, but some other blue chip quarterback transferred in, so he ended up splitting duty his senior year. I know he like ran for 10 touchdowns. Just didn't have the perfect situation to get shoot up the recruiting rankings. But he is a 4-star and better than Miami's quarterback commit. So definitely take it. I mean, when you look
Like
at your
100
quarterback
times
room,
better. I mean, he's ranked like 100 spots ahead of that Jugs or Judd or what's his name? I don't know. I'm sorry. I didn't go that far down the list of the commits. Like when you look at the quarterbacks and stuff, like you've got some that are up here, and then you've got some that like are like down there with the NRs next to them. I get it. I don't know. But like, no. Getting this type of kid as a walk-on is nice. It's nice. It's a nice addition. And I don't know why anybody would make fun of it. He's a walk-on, he's a 4-star, he was at the Elite 11. What do you want? Like, what do you want? You're not using a scholarship. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. If there are issues, there are issues. It will go to where it goes. But the kid
absolutely.
is good.
No, I mean, when you look at our
kid is
quarterback
good.
room, when you look at our quarterback room going forward, you've got obviously DJU for this year, but looking forward to next year, you've got Brock Glenn, you've got Luke Cromenhall, and now you've got Trevor Jackson. And who am I forgetting? Is that it? Luke Cromenhall. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, but yeah. Tramel Jones, obviously. We're bringing in Tramel Jones. So you'll have Tramel Jones, Trevor Jackson, Luke Cromenhall, and Brock Glenn. You'll be in great shape headed into 2025. Who knows? There's no telling who else could end up. There's a chance they could grab a second 2025 quarterback. That's not out of the realm of possibility, but we shall see on that one. But yeah, as of now, we would have 4 quarterbacks going into 2025, and that's about what you want to carry. Is there a chance that Trevor Jackson may transfer out after being scout team for us for a year? There's a chance, but you got to have those bodies. You saw it with Gino English. He was a big part of this program for a couple of years, helping us practice. It was like we had to have Gino English early on to make those practices work. So he'll just be, that much of a weapon. Say you're playing somebody with a running quarterback. Well, you've got Trevor Jackson to play, scout quarterback that week. So can he rise to the occasion and fight for a job? You never know. This is a meritocracy around here with Mike Norvell. He doesn't see stars. He doesn't bring guys in and, this is your 2-year plan and you're going to be the starter. No, you got to get out there and earn it. So, yeah, I absolutely love it. And Bobby was saying that, they actually have some depth at Miami. He likes it. And we can agree to disagree on that. I do like Cam Ward. But I guess, Bobby, if you're still listening, are you saying that Poffenberger is sticking with y'all? I guess I had assumed once y'all signed Cam that Poffenberger may have went somewhere else. So you can let us know about that in the questions or in the comments. But again, the line's still open if you had any questions for me and Jen. We're going to go right along talking about the latest news and everything that's come up. And Bobby said it seems like it. So that's interesting. That would be nice for y'all. If they liked Poffenberger to come in, if he's all right with Cam Ward coming in over him, then yeah, that would be a good one.
Are you saying, is that really a thing? Is it Fufu Flogger isn't going to come in?
That's what I thought, but Bobby's saying no, he's staying.
Well, where else is he going to
go? I don't know, Jen. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere.
You were being serious. You weren't joking. Okay, I got it.
No, I thought when they signed Cam Ward, he was out. I thought they kind of screwed him. That was like kind of how I looked at it. But
I think he already signed his paperwork.
that shit doesn't matter today. They just hit the portal the next. That's like all these freshmen that are already transferring.
Yeah, but that's on the kids to be able to do it. The school can't take it away if he signed it. Just because
That's not
they
what I'm
recruited
saying.
over
I'm
him.
saying he went there to fight for the starting quarterback. That's
Oh, I think
obviously he
that-
has
I
no
think-
chance anymore. That's
I
not
think that
happening.
kid
They
knew-
brought in
I
Cam
think-
Ward.
I think he knew he was going to sit behind Emory or Ja'Cory, whoever decided to stay. I think that
Maybe
kid knew
so.
that. He wanted to go down to Florida. He wanted to leave. I don't really know where he was. Who cares? Albany? Was it Albany? Albany? New York?
I
Yeah,
have
he
no
wanted to
idea.
leave New York. He wanted to leave Albany, New York. He wanted to go down to Miami. That's cool. Yeah. Like, I thought you were saying, like, did Miami pull it? And I was like, no, I don't think they can after
Nope,
he
never
signed
said
anything and
anything like
everything. No, never mind. I just,
Sorry for how we pronounce the Miami quarterbacks, guys.
nobody cares.
That's a FSU guy getting on me about that. But again, guys, get your questions up if you have any questions in the chat.
Dude, Ja'Cory. How else do you want me to say it? Ja'Cory. What do you want me to say? I
Well,
mispronounce my own name, guys.
the latest thing on the news that kind of popped up today before we came live, we saw some people, James and Chris on the timeline hinting at it. We've been talking about it behind the scenes ever since we got our little sanctions to come down. Whatever it is, 3 games. Atkins can't coach, a couple scholarships here, scholarship there. It's like, man, we got all this shit. They made a big stink about it. Sanctions, all this over Alex Atkins giving a guy a ride from point A to point B. A ride that the only reason anybody ever knew about is because some service wanted to get ahead of a story and reported this and that. And he got interrogated by his coach when he got back. And that's all they could get, was gave him a ride for somewhere. Well, all of a sudden, the University of Florida is under investigation from the NCAA, like our buddies hinted at. And what happened at Florida is a lot worse. I don't have inside information on it. We're just going to have to see what happens. But if you're a diehard and you follow recruiting, obviously we don't follow Florida, but there was a big-time quarterback named Jaden Rashada who was going to Florida. That's what the thing was. Everybody knew he was going to Florida. Supposedly had a big deal with Florida, NIL deals, supposed to be $7 million, this and that. There was this guy named Darren Heitner, who pretty much became the scapegoat of the whole thing. They pretty much, blamed everything on him. Everybody at the Florida NIL, surrounded that whole thing was pretty much, oh, he was the bad guy. We didn't do anything wrong. They got him removed. Now you see him on Twitter dunking on Florida every chance he gets. And he's like, oh, is this my fault too? Is this my fault too? So whatever the truth is on this Jaden Rashada thing, I don't know if we'll ever know it, but I think it's pretty damn funny that they were dunking on us and all this stuff for our tiny, teensy little slap on the wrist. And now, bam, now they're the ones at the center of an investigation. And yeah, he actually did commit, I think, to Miami at some point in time. But yeah, I think, Bobby, it's time for you to start shaking in their boots. They've started in Tallahassee, moved to Gainesville. I just imagine they're going to be turning the corner. And what was that thing Andy or Mr. Ruiz had? Life Wallet. I just know there's no way some kind of stank doesn't come off of that. If we're getting in trouble for giving rides, like, yeah, for sure, there's going to be some trouble in Miami before it's said. Did you get to see anything about that? Did you find any information on that?
No, I didn't. So it does look like it's Jaden Rashada, but I'm not seeing. I think it's like almost a bump. I think it's almost a bump meeting. Again, I'm not confirming this. I'm not saying it, but the way I was reading it, that's kind of how it looked to me.
What do you mean bump meeting?
Like when you weren't supposed to meet with a kid, like during a dead period, right? You run into them somewhere, right? Like a bump meeting.
I got you.
That's the way I read it, and I could be totally wrong. But the problem I'm seeing is, and I can't tell if I'm reading it right, is that Florida was already on probation when this happened. So, a bump meaning, if that's the way I've read it properly. Again, they have not come out with hardly any information on this. I was kind of reading Matt Baker's report from the Tampa Bay Times, who, again, I don't trust to save my life. His aunt, tried to ruin Jameis's life, and that's cool. Or no, he was the mouthpiece for Erica Kinsman's aunt. Cool, I got it. So if they were already on probation from the stuff they got during Dan Mullen, would this bump them up to a 1? That's my question. I don't know. I need to talk to somebody about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it can't be good. I mean, you start stacking offense on offense on offense, it's going to get worse. There's no doubt about it. But also another thing that's been popping that we've got to, bring attention to is the Battle's End. The Battle's End has been doing work when it comes to retainment. We had a couple new ones hit just today. I had to look those up for you guys. And again, the phone lines are open. We're only an hour, 20 minutes into this thing. We usually go about 2 hours. I don't know. This thing could be a little bit of a shorter one today. We've really flown through this thing. So if y'all want to keep the conversation going, get the questions in there, call the bat phone, whatever you want. If there's anything you want us to talk about, get it in there. But I'm going to look up these two Battle's End guys that just committed to stay. If I can get my typer to type.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got some freshmen actually jumping in. So Kai Bates has locked in with the Seminoles. Ashlyn Barker, the safety that came in last year. I really, really liked Ashlyn Barker. I think he's gotten a lot better as the years went on. Or not the years, but the year went on last year. And look for him to be maybe hold down one of those backup spots at safety this year. Jalen Lucas signed his Battle's End deal. Ja'Kai Douglas, that was another one. We all knew Ja'Kai Douglas was coming back, but it's cool to see him sign another deal with the Battle's End. Cam Davis, the true freshman, that's the one actually that was sticking in my mind from earlier. Obviously, Cam Davis, this dude is gonna just kill it. His freshman year, he'll probably be. Last year, I picked Conrad Hussey. Probably picked Cam Davis to be the biggest impact freshman this year because, man, as a power back, it's something that Florida State really doesn't have. Can't wait to see what he looks like. And Daryl Jackson, that's another one that was a big question. You're going to sit out for a whole entire season. You transfer over from Miami, and you don't even get to play. You're pretty much the only person in the entire country that gets bent on this rule. North Carolina wide receiver, he gets to play. He gets his turned over. So pretty much they made an example out of Daryl Jackson. He's like, okay, this is the one guy we're going to make an example out of, and then the season ends, they just did away from the rule. So he's like the one and only person to ever get screwed by that rule. But he has signed a deal with the Battle's End, and he will be coming back. So, yes, that D-line is looking great for next year. And again, I know we just kind of mentioned it as an aside, but prayers go out to the Mike Martin family. Word got out that Mike Martin has been moved to hospice care, but that he is otherwise in good health. So there's no dire circumstances, but prayers out for him in that hospice care and that moving forward for his family. And we did get another caller. You're live with the Renegade Report. What you got for us?
Hey, it's Juan again. What do you guys think the chances are if Harbaugh actually leaves that we get some of his players from Michigan? I know Chris Fitzpatrick said they're not going to go after any more transfers this cycle, but what do you think the chances are we get some for the next cycle? That's all I got for you. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, man. No, that is a very good question. I haven't looked at Michigan's roster to see exactly who they have, that could possibly hit or who might hit if Harbaugh left. But you definitely take a look at some of them linebackers, some of them defensive linemen, and some of them offensive linemen for sure. And he mentioned that Spiratics had said that he didn't think we got any more this cycle. I'm not going to put words in his mouth. I'm not sure if he said exactly that, but I think we are I'll say this. I think we are in a good spot where you're not going to see a ton more guys get signed this cycle. The latest big name to really rock the world and hit the portal, actually 2 names, Julian Sayin from Alabama, who we just don't care about. We're not after that. I don't think we're going to bring him in. I don't think there's anything to even talk about there. We'll see what happens to him. But
well, there is something to talk about though.
Well, maybe we'll circle back to that. But Caden Proctor, the tackle from Alabama, that is a guy. Like if there's a guy like that, you bring him in. If Harbaugh goes to the NFL and they have some ungodly, otherworldly left tackle that can come in and be the best, offensive lineman FSU's had in a decade, you get them. But besides that, I agree with what you characterized as Chris saying. I don't think there's many more people you get. If there's just some absolute freak linebacker that's ready to be all world, yeah, go get him. But yeah, I don't see a bunch of more guys until after spring when Norvell knows what he can do this roster. But what's the storyline with saying, Jen?
Well, it was his whole visit to Miami over the summer. That video has made the viral rounds again because Miami was, excited, going, "Are we gonna get him? Can he come back around?" And I have a screenshot that I was gonna release today. I haven't done it yet. Maybe I'll do it later. You guys can check it out. It's really hilarious. It's Gabby going in about it, and then he actually admits he really knows nothing. So I'm going to release it. I haven't done it yet. I'm going to do it. I'm busy, guys. I'm busy. I don't just troll Miami all day.
So what happened on this visit? Am I forgetting something funny that happened?
Oh, Lord. So, God, what's the name of that coach? Okay, whatever. One of their coaches, it doesn't matter. One of their coaches is telling him, well, you're committed to Alabama. The nightlife in Miami is so great. Saturday and Sunday in Tuscaloosa is fine, but Monday and Tuesday isn't. And he goes, yeah, but I'm not here to go out. Like yes.
Yeah.
So it totally made the rounds again. It's so funny. Miami really thinks so highly of themselves, and it's really hilarious. If you want to get good football players, you've got to win games on the field and stop worrying about your nightlife. You've got to stop that. You have to stop that. It's the nightlife stuff for me with Miami. Go get a stadium, stop renting, stop getting your keys, stop leaving them in the lockbox, stop needing to put in a code to get into your home. It's hilarious. And then it's sad at the same time because, again, if Miami was any good, my God, Florida State would have had a higher seed in 2014. It would have been great, but Miami sucks, and they continue to suck. They beat Virginia Tech last year, and then, or not Virginia, Texas A&M, and then Texas A&M fired Jimbo Fisher because they lost to suck-ass Miami.
Yeah,
that's the one thing you guys did do good. You got Jimbo fired, so thank you.
Well, we got one more question. You're live with the Renegade Rundown. What you got for us?
Hey, what's going on, George? It's Angelo. I was just calling to holler at you. Say hey, everybody. Got a question. I saw that Contractual that hopped in transfer portal. Do you think we losing more offensive linemen, and who else do we go after to replace them?
Ooh, that is a good one. I appreciate that, Angelo. I'll definitely talk about that for a few minutes. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I had totally forgot about that. Yeah, definitely. Kanile Charlton has hit the portal. That's one of those ones where it's just, it was written on the wall for the young man. I don't think there was a chance he was going to crack the 2 deep at this point. I could pull up the roster real quick to look. I don't have it right in front of me. But, yeah, I could definitely see. I don't see a ton of guys before spring. But, look, guys, and this will probably be the last one. We'll probably get off of here right at an hour and a half. But look, this spring is going to be like survival of the fittest. It's going to be Mortal Kombat. It's going to be all that stuff. We're over on scholarships. We're going to have whatever. I think we have around 90 people on the team right now. Like, there's going to be people that are going to have to go. Those exit interviews, I wouldn't be surprised if we see another 10 transfers post-spring because they're going to probably want to bring 3 or 4 guys in. Obviously, they're going to staff, there's going to stash guys as walk-ons that are getting paid. through NIL and stuff like that. But only so many players are going to be willing to do that. Only such a kind of level of player are going to do that. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But I definitely think you're onto something there, Angelo. I think you definitely see guys hit the portal. I think Schrader's already has. Now Charlton has, Bless Harris. So, yeah, it would not surprise me one bit if another Florida State O lineman hit the portal at all.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's gonna, pretty much do it for us today. We really appreciate you guys. What is today? Friday. Do we have anything planned Sunday? Did we ever find out if that one was going to be this Sunday or next Sunday?
I'm guessing it's going to be next Sunday.
All righty. Well, we got an open date. We don't have anything to announce just yet, but we will let you know what we got going on Sunday. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And again, guys, the memberships are open. We've got the merch shop is now open. You can find the link in the description here. I put it in the comments. I'll throw it in the other comments section after we go off live. But thank you all so much. Maybe we can get a North Carolina to join the show one of these days. But go Noles, and we will check you guys out next time.